"Your black son should apologize first," said my father-in-law Harold, pointing his finger directly at my face during Thanksgiving dinner. His voice cut through the silence of the elegant dining room like a knife, and the clatter of forks against plates ceased instantly. My wife Jennifer froze with her fork in the air. My stepchildren, 16-year-old Tyler and 14-year-old Emma, lowered their eyes to their plates as if studying the physics of gravity applied to mashed potatoes. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice coming out calmer than I expected. Harold leaned forward in his head chair, the one he always insisted on occupying at every family meal. "You heard him perfectly well. My grandson was just joking when he said that about you at school. But now the principal wants a meeting because of your complaint. My name is Malik, I'm 42 years old, and I've been working for 8 years as vice president of marketing at the Henderson Family Construction Company. A company that Harold founded 35 years ago and where I had built my career since marrying Jennifer." The thing Tyler had said at school was calling a black classmate my stepdad's friend. When questioned by the teacher about the comment, Tyler explained that my black stepfather always says that black people should help each other. "I never said that. I never even used the word black in front of the children." "Harold," Jennifer finally found her voice, Tyler lied to the teacher. "Malik never." "I don't care what he said or didn't say," Harold interrupted, cutting his daughter off with a sharp wave of his hand. "The boy is part of our family." "Malik is," he paused deliberately, his eyes scanning my face as if he were evaluating merchandise. "An addition." The silence that followed was so thick I could hear the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Jennifer was pale, her hands trembling slightly. Emma had tears in her eyes but kept her head down. "An addition," I repeated, savoring each syllable. "Exactly. And additions don't create problems for the main family. Especially additions who depend on this family for their livelihood." Ah. We'd reached the crux of the matter. Harold had never been subtle about what he thought of our marriage. 8 years of comments about how Jennifer could have done better, how I was lucky to have found a family that accepted me, how I should be more grateful for the opportunity they gave me at the company. 8 years of smiling and swallowing every microaggression, every joke about my hair, every question about whether I really graduated from Northwestern, or if it was affirmative action. But calling on his own grandson to lie about me, turning me into some kind of racist stereotype in the mind of a 16-year-old? That had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. "You're asking me to apologize for something I didn't do," I said slowly, to protect Tyler from the consequences of a lie he made up to justify a racist comment. "I'm asking you to be a man of the family," Harold replied, slamming his fist on the table. "But maybe I'm expecting too much." Jennifer stood up abruptly. "Dad, that's enough. Malik isn't going to apologize for something he—" "Jennifer, sit down," Harold ordered in a voice I recognized from the company offices. The voice he used when he made final decisions. "Either your husband apologizes and resolves this, or maybe it's time we rethink certain family structures." Family structures. Like my job. Like our house, which technically was still in the Henderson Company's name as an executive residence. Like my stepchildren's education fund, which Harold personally managed. I looked at Jennifer, who was standing next to her chair, torn between supporting her husband and defying the father who controlled virtually every aspect of our financial life. I looked at Tyler, who was still avoiding my gaze, probably ashamed of his own lie but unable to admit it in front of his grandfather. I looked at Emma, who had always seen me as a father, and who was now watching her family disintegrate because of her grandfather's prejudice. And then I looked at Harold, waiting for my answer with that smug smile of someone who always got what he wanted through financial blackmail. "You're right," I said finally, slowly rising from my chair. "It's time to rethink certain structures." Harold's smile widened. "But it won't be me apologizing," I continued, taking the napkin from my lap and placing it on the table. "It will be you finding out what happens when an addition decides it no longer needs to be added to anything. If you're following this story of prejudice and reversal, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what happened after that dinner will shock everyone." I left the dining room with my dignity intact, but with a broken heart. Jennifer followed me to the garage, begging to talk, but my mind was already working on a different frequency. Harold had no idea what a mistake he had just made. Because while he thought he had just put me in my place, I was starting to calculate exactly how to put him back in his. The next morning, I was in the office at 6:30 a.m., as usual. But this time, It wasn't to review marketing campaigns or analyze sales metrics. I was scanning every document I had saved during my 8 years at Henderson Construction. Harold arrived at 8:15 a.m., 15 minutes later than usual. I could hear him greeting the secretary with that deep, authoritative voice that commanded automatic respect in any environment. "Good morning, Dolores. Is the quarterly report on my desk?" "Yes, Mr. Henderson." Mr. Malik left everything organized before 7 a.m. There was a pause. I imagine Harold frowned, wondering why I was working normally after our conversation yesterday. At 9:30 a.m., he appeared at my office door. He didn't knock. He never did. "Malik, I need to talk to you." I looked up from my computer, where I was saving every email Harold had sent me over the past 2 years to the cloud. Especially the ones where he questioned my cultural competence to deal with high-class clients. "Sure, Harold. Come in." He sat down in the chair across from my desk with the posture of someone who owns everything around him. Even in my office, he managed to look like he owned the place. "About last night," he began, adjusting the cuffs of his Italian linen shirt. "Jennifer is emotional. You know how women get when there's tension in the family." Emotional. The word he always used whenever Jennifer expressed an opinion of her own. "I understand," I replied, continuing to type. "Look, Malik," he leaned forward, using the paternal tone he reserved for important conversations. "You're a good employee. One of the best we've ever had in the marketing department. But you need to understand your position here." I stopped typing. "My position?" "You're not just another employee. You're part of the family. And in the Henderson family, we protect each other. Even when," he paused deliberately, "when someone makes small errors in judgment." Small errors in judgment. Reporting his stepson's racist comment was a small error in judgment. "Harold, Tyler lied to the teacher about something I never said." "Tyler is a child," he replied quickly. "Children exaggerate, distort situations. The important thing is that this doesn't turn into a public incident that could affect our family reputation." Our family reputation. As if I were a risk to the Henderson brand. "And what exactly are you proposing?" Harold smiled. That smile I had seen hundreds of times in client meetings, when he was about to close a deal on his terms. "A simple solution. You call the school, clarify that there was a misunderstanding, that Tyler just repeated something he heard out of context. No formal accusations, no unnecessary investigation." "And if I don't do that?" The smile disappeared for a split second before returning, more forced this time. "Malik, let's be practical. You have a family to support. Jennifer hasn't worked in years. The boys need financial stability for college. This company has been very generous to you over the years." Generous. As if my work, my results, my 60 hours a week were a favor they were doing me. "I am aware of my responsibilities," I said calmly. "Good. Then you understand that certain loyalties are expected in exchange for the security we provide." Loyalties. The word sounded like a threat wrapped in gift paper. Harold stood up, smoothing his suit. "I'm sure you'll make the right decision. After all, you've always been a smart man. You know how to recognize when you're in a privileged position." Privileged. Being married to his white daughter was a privilege I should be grateful for by keeping quiet about racism. After he left, I stared at the closed door for several minutes. I wasn't surprised. Harold had always made it clear that my presence in the family was conditional, that my place in the company depended on my willingness to be the model son-in-law who didn't cause any trouble. What he didn't understand was that I had spent 8 years documenting every microaggression, every comment, every joke about my color or origin. Not out of paranoia, but out of experience. Men like Harold always believe they can use economic power as a leash. At 11 a.m., Jennifer called. "Malik, Dad said you guys talked. He said you understood the situation." "That's right. I understand perfectly." There was a pause. Jennifer knew my tone. She knew how to distinguish between agreement and strategic understanding. "Malik, please. I know it's complicated, but Tyler is just a confused kid. And Dad, he's worried about the company, about the family. It's not personal." "It's not personal." 8 years of marriage and she still believed that racism against her own husband wasn't personal. Jennifer, I need to ask you something. If it had been Emma who made the racist comment, and some black parent wanted a meeting at the school, would you think it was right for me to ask you to apologize for something you didn't do? Long silence. Very long. That's different, Malik. How? Emma would never do that. But what if she did? Malik, you're complicating things. Dad isn't asking for much. It's just to maintain family harmony. Family harmony. Maintained at the expense of my dignity. I understand, I said and hung up. At lunchtime, I didn't leave the office. I continued transferring files, organizing documents, creating backups of all the material I had produced over the years. Every campaign, every strategy, every contract I had negotiated. Because Harold had made a fundamental mistake in threatening me this morning. He assumed I was expendable, that my contribution to the company was secondary, that Jennifer and the children were just hostages to his financial decisions. But Harold didn't know one crucial thing. For the past 2 years, I had been in quiet negotiations with 3 of Henderson Construction's biggest clients. Not as an employee of the company, but as an independent consultant they had met through my work. Clients who represented 40% of the company's annual revenue. Clients who trusted me, not the Henderson brand. Clients who didn't know that the owner of the company thought it was acceptable for his grandchildren to lie about racist comments to protect the family reputation. At 3 p.m., Harold stopped by my office again. This time, he just nodded, as if our morning conversation had solved everything. I nodded back, with the same cordial smile I used at all family gatherings. But while Harold left satisfied, believing he had kept his authority intact, I was finalizing a document that would completely change the power dynamic between us. A resignation letter that made no mention of family problems or personal conflicts. Just a professional decision to seek new business challenges. Because Harold was about to discover the difference between controlling an employee and trying to control a man who always had options of his own. At 5 p.m. that Wednesday, I received a call from Jennifer that would change everything. Malik, I need to tell you something, her voice was shaky. Tyler came to see me after school today. I stopped organizing the files and focused on her tone. He told me the truth about what happened at school. Silence. I knew what was coming, but I needed to hear it from her. He never repeated anything you said. He made up that story about you to impress some older boys. He said he wanted to seem more interesting by having a black stepfather who knew about life. Interesting. A racist fantasy based on stereotypes to gain social status. And why is he telling me this now? I asked. Because some parents called the school asking for more details. The principal wants to talk to both of you tomorrow. Tyler is afraid the lie will be discovered. Of course. It wasn't guilt, it was fear of the consequences. Jennifer, did you tell your father? A long pause. A very long pause. Malik, he won't change his mind. He said it doesn't matter if Tyler lied. What matters is that you caused a public scandal that could affect the company's contracts. Public scandal. Reporting racism was a scandal. Did he say anything else? He said that if you don't resolve this by Friday, he'll reconsider your position at the company. And that maybe you should look for other job opportunities. Other opportunities. As if I were a disposable problem. What about you, Jennifer? What do you think about all this? Silence again. The kind of silence that reveals more than any words. Malik, I love you. But Dad built this company from scratch. He's worried about his reputation, his conservative clients, about having a black son-in-law who won't accept being called a racist liar to protect a spoiled grandson. It's not like that, Malik. You're oversimplifying. Jennifer, answer one simple question. Do you believe I should apologize for something I didn't do to protect Tyler from the consequences of a racist lie? More silence. The kind that lasts forever and says it all. Malik, please. Just this once. For the sake of the family. For the sake of the family. The family where I was an addition who owed eternal gratitude. I hung up the phone and stared at the screen for several minutes. I wasn't surprised. Disappointed, maybe. But not surprised. Jennifer had made her choice. Not her husband, not justice, not her own principles. She had chosen financial security and her father's approval. At 6:30 p.m., I called Marcus Thompson, Vice President of Thompson & Associates, one of Atlanta's largest construction companies. Marcus and I had developed a professional friendship over the past 2 years. Malik. How's it going, man? Long time no see. Marcus, I need to ask you a confidential question. If I left Henderson Construction tomorrow, would you be interested in discussing a partnership? Man, are you kidding? I've been trying to poach you for 2 years. You're the only reason Henderson can still compete with us on corporate contracts. Your marketing work is impeccable. What if I brought some clients with me? Malik, are you serious? Marcus, answer me this. Would you do business with a company whose owner thinks it's acceptable to force black employees to apologize for reporting racist comments? Silence. Then, a low laugh. Man, now you have my full attention. How about dinner tomorrow? After hanging up, I opened the confidential file I had saved from the last client meeting. Henderson Construction depended on 5 major contracts. 3 of them had been won through my personal relationships with the decision-makers. James McKinney, from McKinney Development Group. Robert Silva, from Silva Commercial Properties. And Patricia Harrison, from Harrison Infrastructure. 3 people who respected me professionally and who would be interested in knowing how Harold treated black employees. Especially Patricia, who was chair of the Nashville Business Diversity Council. At 8 p.m., Jennifer came home. She walked into the kitchen where I was preparing dinner, a routine we had maintained for 8 years, and sat down at the table without saying a word. Tyler and Emma were in their rooms, probably sensing the tension that had settled in the house. Malik, she finally began, Dad said that if you fix this, he'll forget everything. Back to normal. Normal, I repeated, stirring the sauce on the stove. And what is normal, Jennifer? Me smiling and pretending I didn't hear when Tyler tells the next racial joke? Or when Harold makes the next comment about how I should be more grateful. He's not racist, Malik. He's just old school. Old school. The favorite euphemism for polite racism. Jennifer, your father called me an addition. He said I depend on the family for support. He forced Tyler to lie about me. And now he's blackmailing me into publicly humiliating myself. On what planet is that not racism? She started to cry. Not tears of anger or indignation, but of frustration at having to choose sides. Malik, I don't know what to do. I can't fight with my father. He's all I have. What about me? What am I? You're my husband. But he's my family. Ah. Finally, the truth. After 8 years, I still wasn't family. I was a husband. A different category, apparently. I turned off the stove and turned to her. Jennifer, I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to school with Tyler. He's going to tell the principal the truth. He's going to admit he lied about me. He's going to apologize publicly. And then I'll go back to the office and hand in my resignation letter to your father. Her eyes widened. Malik, you can't. How are we going to pay for the house? The boys' school? Insurance? Don't worry about that. What do you mean? You don't have another job? Not yet, I smiled for the first time in days. But I have something better. I have options your father never imagined I could have. She looked at me confused. Jennifer had never paid attention to the details of my work. She knew I did marketing, but she didn't understand that I had built relationships that transcended the Henderson brand. Malik, please. Don't do this. Don't destroy our family out of pride. Pride. Maintaining dignity had become pride. Jennifer, I'm not destroying our family. I'm saving what's left of my self-esteem. And if you can't see the difference between fighting racism and pride, then maybe our family is already more destroyed than we thought. She left the kitchen crying. I heard the bedroom door slam. At 10 p.m., I received a message from Harold. Malik, Jennifer told me you talked. I hope you came to a sensible conclusion. The meeting at the school is at 9 a.m. I expect solutions, not more problems. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started typing 3 different emails. To James McKinney, James, I need to talk to you about something important related to Henderson Construction. Can I call you tomorrow? To Patricia Harrison. Patricia, I'd like to discuss some ethical issues that have come up and may affect our future contracts. Do you have time for coffee this week? To Robert Silva. Robert, some situations have come up at Henderson that I think you should know about before signing the contract renewal. Can we talk privately? These weren't accusations. They weren't threats. They were just invitations to talk. Conversations Harold never imagined I could have. Because Harold had made a fundamental mistake. He thought he controlled my career because he signed my paycheck. But a career isn't built on salary alone. It's built on relationships, reputation, and competence. And while he had spent 8 years seeing me as a disposable employee, I had spent those same 8 years building something he could never take away: independent professional credibility. I sent the 3 emails at 11:47 p.m. And for the first time in days, I slept peacefully. Not because I was sure what was going to happen, but because I had finally stopped pretending I could control the actions of others. The only thing I could control was my own choices. And tomorrow, Harold would find out exactly what choices I had made. On Thursday morning at 6:45 a.m., I was already in the office reviewing every document Harold had signed in the last 5 years. I wasn't just looking for evidence of racism, I was mapping the entire ecosystem of dependencies he had unwittingly created. The first response came at 7:30 a.m. James McKinney. Malik, I always have time to talk to you. How about today at 3 p.m.? I'm curious about these issues you mentioned. At 8:15 a.m., Patricia Harrison replied. Ethical issues are my specialty. Coffee tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the Marriott? And Malik, if Henderson Construction is involved, I need to know before next week's board meeting. Board. Patricia was on the Nashville Business Diversity Council. If she brought Henderson Construction's practices up for discussion, the repercussions would be significant. At 9 a.m., Harold appeared at my office door. This time, he knocked. A gesture that told me everything about his perception of how our conversation had gone yesterday. Malik, how was the meeting at the school? He had spoken to Jennifer. Tyler told the principal the truth, I replied without looking up from my screen. He admitted he lied about me. He apologized publicly. Harold came in and closed the door behind him. And that's it. The school considers the matter resolved. He sat down, visibly relieved. Great. I knew you'd do the right thing. The right thing. As if I had humiliated myself according to his script. Harold, can I ask you something? Sure. In all these years working together, do you really believe I told Tyler that black people should help each other? Harold hesitated for a split second before smiling. Malik, it doesn't matter what anyone said. What matters is that we protect the family. We protect our mutual interests. Our mutual interests. As if racism were just a difference of opinion. I understand perfectly, I said, returning to typing. Harold left satisfied. He truly believed that his blackmail had worked, that I had bowed to economic pressure and returned to my place. At 10 a.m., I opened a file I had saved 3 years ago, an audio recording of a client meeting where Harold made comments about cultural adequacy when we suggested hiring more black employees for the affordable housing project. At 10:30 a.m., I located the emails where Harold questioned my ability to relate to elite clientele whenever I suggested expanding into more diverse markets. At 11 a.m., I found the correspondence where he joked about promoting me to Director of Diversity instead of Marketing, since you understand the subject. 3 years of documentation. No speculation, no interpretation. Concrete evidence of a systematic pattern of racial discrimination disguised as business concerns. At 11:45 a.m., Jennifer called. Malik, Dad said you resolved the situation at school. I'm so relieved. Tyler was brave to tell the truth, I replied. What about the rest? About last night. Jennifer, can I ask you an honest question? At any point in the last 8 years, have you noticed your dad treating me differently because of my color? Long silence. Malik, Dad treats everyone intensely. It's his personality. That doesn't answer my question. Sometimes he says things without thinking. But he's not racist, Malik. He hired you, he promoted you. He hired me because I was the best candidate. He promoted me because I delivered results. That doesn't negate the racial comments, Jennifer. Malik, please. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. A mountain out of a molehill. Racism had become a mountain out of a molehill. I understand, I said and hung up. At 12:30 p.m., during my lunch break, I called Marcus Thompson. Marcus, about our conversation yesterday. I'm serious about changing careers. Malik, man, you have no idea how long I've been waiting for this call. But tell me, what kind of situation are you facing there? I told him everything. My father-in-law's racist comment. Tyler's lie. The financial blackmail. The 8 years of documented microaggressions. Marcus was silent for several seconds. Man, he finally said, this isn't just a job change you need. It's a declaration of independence. And I want to help you make it as impactful as possible. What do you have in mind? How about if I offered you not just a job, but a partnership? Thompson and Associates is expanding into Nashville. We need someone who knows the local market, the clients, the contracts. Partnership. Not a job. Ownership. Marcus, are you serious? Malik, you have an impeccable reputation in the market. Half of Henderson Construction's clients respect you more than Harold himself. If you came with me, we would bring not only your experience, but probably some interesting contracts. Some interesting contracts. Like the 3 I had personally helped negotiate. I need 48 hours to think about it. Sure. But Malik, when you decide, let me know. I'll prepare a proposal that will make Harold realize exactly what he's missing. At 3 p.m., I met James McKinney at the downtown cafe. James was a straightforward man with no patience for beating around the bush. Malik, get to the point. What's going on at Henderson? I showed him Harold's emails. The discreet recordings. The comments documented over the years. James read everything in silence, his expression growing increasingly serious. Malik, this is explosive material. Are you sure you want to go down this path? James, if you found out that a business partner treated employees this way, would you continue to do business with them? Of course not. Especially considering that our company has strict policies on diversity and inclusion. Strict policies. James' contract with Henderson was worth $2.8 million a year. Malik, I have to ask you, is this about revenge or principles? It's about dignity, I replied. And about making sure other black men don't go through what I went through. James nodded slowly. I'll need a few weeks to review our contracts with Henderson. If this evidence is confirmed, well, our executive board won't be happy. If you're following this story of fighting racism and preparing for change, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because the transformation that's coming will surprise everyone. At 5 p.m., I returned to the office. Harold was in a meeting, but I could see him through the glass door, gesturing animatedly to 2 men in suits. Probably discussing new contracts, new projects, new ways to expand his empire. If only he knew that the foundation of that empire was being carefully removed, brick by brick, right under his feet. I opened my drawer and took out a folder I had put together during lunch. Inside were 3 job offers I had received over the past 2 years and never seriously considered. 2 from Atlanta, 1 from Charlotte. All with salaries higher than what I earned at Henderson. Harold always assumed that I depended on him financially. That without the generosity of the Henderson family, I would have no options. Another miscalculation in a long list of underestimations. At 6:30 p.m., Jennifer came home while I was making dinner. A routine we maintained religiously, even in the midst of the crisis. Malik, I talked to Dad today. He said you were very mature in resolving the situation at school. Tyler was brave to tell the truth, I repeated. What about everything else? Can we move on now? Move on. As if racism were just a misunderstanding that could be forgotten. Jennifer, can I show you something? I grabbed my laptop and opened the folder with Harold's emails. Read this. She read the first email, then the second, then stopped. Malik, I didn't know he wrote those things. Now you know. Does that change anything? She closed the laptop slowly. Malik, I understand you're upset. But Dad will change. He just needs time to adjust. Time to adjust. 8 years hadn't been enough. Jennifer, I need to tell you something. Tomorrow I'm handing in my resignation letter. She looked at me as if I had announced I was going to Mars. Malik, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. But how are we going to live? The house, the boys, health insurance. I have other options, Jennifer. I always have. What options? Options I never considered because I thought I had a family that would support me when I faced racism. Options I ignored because I prioritized family stability over personal dignity. Jennifer started to cry. Not tears of sadness, but of financial panic. Malik, please. Don't do this to us. Don't do this to the kids. To us. As if leaving a racist environment was a betrayal of the family. Jennifer, I'm not doing this to you. I'm doing this for you. So that Tyler learns that lying about racism has consequences. So that Emma sees that dignity cannot be negotiated. So that you understand that true love means choosing what is right, not what is comfortable. She left the kitchen without answering. At 10 p.m., I finished my resignation letter. 2 pages. Professional, cordial, no mention of personal or family problems. Just a decision to seek new professional challenges. Harold would never know the real reason until it was too late to do anything about it. Because while he slept peacefully, convinced he had brought me back into line, I was finalizing the details of a transformation that would completely redraw the map of power between us. Starting tomorrow, Harold would discover the difference between controlling an employee and facing a free man. On Friday morning at 8:30 a.m., I walked into Harold's office for the last time as an employee of Henderson Construction. He was on the phone, gesturing animatedly as he talked about quarterly projections. He didn't notice that I was carrying a brown folder that contained the end of the world as he knew it. I waited for him to finish his call before placing my resignation letter on the table. Harold, I would like to hand in my letter of resignation. 2 weeks' notice, as per my contract. He looked at the envelope as if it were a bomb. Then he looked at me with that expression of someone who doesn't understand how an employee can make a decision without consulting the boss first. Malik, what is this? Yesterday you resolved the situation at school. I thought we had reached an understanding. Yes, we did. I understood exactly who you are. Harold opened the letter and read it quickly. His expression changed from confusion to irritation. This is ridiculous. You can't leave now. We're in the middle of 3 important negotiations. McKinney, Harrison, Silva. They all depend on your marketing work. Don't worry, I smiled calmly. I'm sure you'll find someone suitable to replace this addition. The word hit home. Harold blinked several times, probably remembering the term he had used about me at Thanksgiving dinner. Malik, let's be practical. Maybe I was harsh in family conversations. But you know I value your work. Harold, can I tell you something interesting? For the past 8 years, I've documented every racial comment you've made about me. Every joke, every question about my cultural competence, every suggestion that I should be grateful to work here. His color changed slightly. Malik, if you're misinterpreting some conversations. I'm not misinterpreting anything. I'm reporting. I opened the folder and took out a digital recording. This is from 3 years ago, a meeting about the affordable housing project. You said, and I quote, Malik may have interesting ideas about this type of client, since he understands their mindset. Harold was silent. And this one, I continued, taking out another file, is from 2 years ago. You questioning whether I had the cultural adequacy to deal with high-income clients. Malik, look. I'm not done yet. I placed more documents on the table. Emails where you suggest promoting me to Director of Diversity instead of Marketing because I would understand these issues. Recordings of meetings where you question whether my education at Northwestern was my own merit. Harold was pale now. What do you want? I don't want anything, Harold. I already got what I needed. My phone rang. It was James McKinney. I answered it in front of Harold. James, good morning. Malik, I just got an interesting call. Patricia Harrison told me about a conversation you two had. About discriminatory practices at Henderson Construction. Harold tried to grab the phone from my hand, but I pulled away. Yes, James. I shared some evidence with Patricia. As a member of the Corporate Diversity Council, she felt it was appropriate to review our partnership. Malik, I need to be blunt. My executive board met last night. We cannot continue to do business with companies that have documented discriminatory practices. Our contract with Henderson will be cancelled today. Harold turned white as a sheet. I completely understand, James. Thank you for your transparency. I hung up and looked at Harold, who was in complete shock. Malik, you can't do this. You can't destroy the company because of a family misunderstanding. I'm not destroying anything, Harold. I'm simply informing business partners about discriminatory practices. It's their responsibility to decide how to act. My phone rang again. This time it was Patricia Harrison. Malik, I just left an emergency board meeting. We reviewed all the material you provided. The unanimous consensus was to immediately cancel the contract with Henderson Construction. Thank you for letting me know, Patricia. Malik, can I ask you something? Are you okay? I imagine it must be difficult to work in such an environment for so long. I'm fine, Patricia. In fact, I've never been better. Harold was now visibly shaking. And Malik, Patricia continued, the board would like to invite you to a meeting. We are impressed by your courage in documenting and reporting these practices. We have some opportunities that may interest you. It would be my pleasure, Patricia. After hanging up, Harold exploded. Malik, you just destroyed 35 years of work. McKinney and Harrison account for 60% of our revenue. Technically, he said calmly, they accounted for 60% of revenue. And Harold, you forgot about Robert Silva. As if on cue, my phone rang for the third time. Malik, this is Robert Silva. I heard from James McKinney about the situation at Henderson. My legal department has reviewed our contracts. Unfortunately, we cannot maintain partnerships with companies under investigation for racial discrimination. Harold snatched the phone from my hand. Robert, this is Harold Henderson. There's been a misunderstanding. Malik is. Mr. Henderson, Robert's voice turned icy. Malik sent me substantial documentation. Audio recordings, emails, messages. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a pattern. Our contract is cancelled. Harold hung up and stared at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was pure panic. Malik, listen to me. We can work this out. I can promote you, raise your salary, completely change how things work here. Harold, can I tell you something that will interest you? Over the past 2 years, Marcus Thompson of Thompson & Associates has tried to recruit me several times. Yesterday, he offered me not just a job, but a partnership. To open a Thompson branch in Nashville. A partnership. That's right. And Harold, guess who the first clients interested in doing business with Thompson Nashville are? James McKinney, Patricia Harrison, and Robert Silva. Understanding washed over his face in waves. First surprise, then horror, finally the complete realization that he hadn't just lost an employee. He had lost 80% of the company's revenue to a competitor who now had the best marketing professional in town. Malik, you can't do this. The company, the families who work here, Jennifer, the children. Harold, you should have thought about that before you called me add-on and tried to force me to humiliate myself to protect a racist grandson. Harold stood up and began pacing back and forth. Malik, be reasonable. What do you want? Money? A stake in the company? I can make you a partner. Harold, you still don't understand. I don't want your company. I already have my own. What do you mean? Ridge South Systems was never dissolved. It's my marketing consultancy. And starting Monday, it will be the official agency for Thompson & Associates in Nashville. Harold stopped pacing. You planned all this? Harold, I documented, prepared, and protected myself. When you threatened me with unemployment to force me to accept racism, you only accelerated a process I was already considering. Malik, please. I can change. The company can change. We can implement diversity training, anti-discrimination policies. Harold, I said, standing up, 3 years ago you had the opportunity to change. When I started documenting the comments. A year ago, when Tyler made his first racist comment. Last week, when I explained to you that he had lied about me. Malik. But you chose, at every opportunity, to protect privilege rather than confront prejudice. And now you're discovering that actions have consequences. I walked toward the door. Malik, wait. What about Jennifer? What about the children? Are you going to destroy your own family? I stopped and turned around. Harold, my family always knew I had options. The only person who assumed I was dependent and disposable was you. But Jennifer said. Jennifer chose sides when she asked me to humiliate myself to keep the peace in the family. She can choose again now. I left the office, closed the door, and walked through the hallways where I had worked for 8 years. Some colleagues greeted me as usual, unaware that they were witnessing the end of an era. When I reached the parking lot, my phone was ringing incessantly. Jennifer. Malik, Dad just called me in tears. He said you destroyed the company. That we're going to lose everything. Is that true? It's true that I canceled contracts that accounted for most of Henderson Construction's revenue. How could you do that to us? Jennifer, I didn't do it to you. I did it for myself. And for my dignity. Malik, come back. We can talk. We can work this out. Jennifer, there's nothing to work out. Your father chose to treat me like a disposable employee. Now he's finding out that I never was. I hung up the phone and looked at the Henderson Construction building one last time. Harold was at the office window, watching me. Even from a distance, I could see that he was on the phone, probably trying to do damage control with other clients. But while he was trying to salvage the wreckage of the empire he had built, I was driving to my first meeting as a partner at Thompson and Associates Nashville. The meeting where we would sign the contracts that would transform Harold Henderson from construction magnate to a footnote in the story of how racism can destroy an entire family legacy. And the most incredible thing? I had achieved all of this without breaking a single law, without lying once, without even raising my voice. I had used only the truth, the competence I had always had, and the network of relationships he never imagined I possessed. As I drove, I felt no anger or revenge. I felt only the quiet satisfaction of a man who had finally stopped accepting less than he deserved. Harold was about to discover that some lessons are too expensive to forget. 3 months later, Harold sold Henderson Construction for a fraction of its original value. With 80% of its contracts canceled, bankruptcy was inevitable. Jennifer came to me, asking for forgiveness and a second chance. I chose you, she said, tears in her eyes. I choose our family. Tyler, now understanding the consequences of his lies, apologized publicly at school and began therapy to deal with unconscious biases. Emma told me she was proud to have a stepfather who fights for what's right. Thompson and Associates Nashville made $12 million in its first year. Harold? He works as a junior consultant in Atlanta, earning less than I paid my assistant. The lesson? Dignity is non-negotiable. Racism has a price. And sometimes, the most powerful silence comes after the storm you created yourself. If this story of overcoming adversity and justice touched you, subscribe to the channel for more stories of people who turned humiliation into victory. Last week, I ran into Harold at the airport. He looked away. I just smiled and moved on, carrying the briefcase for my next $1 million meeting. Some people learn. Others just pay.